Okay, hello everybody. My name is Mithun Sudarshan. 21 years old. I am currently studying philosophy and political science at McMaster University, just down the street here. Before I turn this into some kind of America's Got Talent audition, I'm going to tell you exactly why I'm up here. So I'm here to share my testimony. Before I begin, I also want to thank, first I want to thank God. I also want to thank the Alpha Committee for allowing me, giving me this opportunity to just be up here and present my testimony. I also want to thank everyone who's here in attendance to listen. Yeah. So, first of all, who here has heard of the city Scarborough? Yeah, it looks like everyone has their hands up. Doesn't exactly have the best reputation. So for some people, you could say they had a great upbringing. They grew up in the suburbs, they went to a nice school, they had a lot of friends, and often they'll tell you that it was a great experience. For some people, like myself, on the other hand, I didn't have such a great opportunity growing up. I grew up in low-income housing. My parents were on welfare. I didn't have any siblings, so I had no one to really look up to. Most of my friends at the time are no longer around anymore. They're either dead or in jail. And so these things really plagued the young me. Like, I didn't really know what was next. I didn't really have any goals. I didn't have any aspirations. I grew up in a Hindu household, so my parents took me to the temple twice a week. You know, Fridays, Tuesdays, I wasn't allowed to eat meat. It was kind of like a vegetarian day kind of thing, and we did a lot of those like spiritual traditions. But I never felt as though I had a connection with God. I never knew how to pray. I never knew how to go about having a relationship of some sort. And so, growing up in this disparaged community, I felt as though like God wasn't really there. God wasn't looking over us. We were kind of cursed. All the people that I knew, they got into selling drugs on the streets. They went into robbing cars. There was a huge carjacking crisis during that time. There was like home invasions. I was homeless when I was 16 years old. My parents were abusive in my household, and so I didn't have basic necessities that other kids had. I didn't have food on the table for me. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I had to work very hard by the time I was 17 years old just to pay the bills. Funny enough, by the time I turned 17 years old, I was the only one in my entire family's lineage to have worked a job, which was pretty sad to think about, but it was just the reality. That's the life that I came from. And so, you might be thinking, where am I going with all this? Well, in this pit of despair and hopelessness, that's where I found myself. I found that just by believing in the people around me and trying to find hope in people, it wasn't going to work, because especially in the school that I went to, all I saw was just violence. In my grade 9 orientation week, there was 4 people that were stabbed. In my grade 10 orientation week, there was many people that were getting into fights. There was like I was part of one of the worst schools in the Toronto District School Board. So there was another school that was next door to us, and they merged with us, and there was just constant conflicts happening over and over again. I couldn't even walk home a certain way. I had to go a different path just to walk home, or else I get robbed. And so this stuff really obviously affected me. I had no choice but to kind of figure out my own path. And a lot of the friends that I had, they were kind of keeping me away from it as much as they could, but they also surrounded me with more problems. And naturally, by the time I turned 18, 19, I started picking up on all these habits. I started developing a drug addiction. I started smoking weed. I started drinking alcohol, just like my dad did. When he used to come home when I was 8 years old, he'd be just drunk, straight drunk. By the time I was 10 years old, I'd already received my first stabbing. I'd almost been killed by cops before. I'd been strip searched by police officers. I'd had my friends off the street pulled and told that you guys match the description, things like that. It was just normal occurrences in Scarborough. And by the time I turned 18 years old, I got into a relationship with this one girl, and that's where my life completely changed. I, at this point, kind of wanted to leave behind my whole lifestyle of partying and clubbing and drinking and smoking and stuff like that, kind of jumping from relationship to relationship and stuff like that. But it didn't seem as though she wanted me to do that. She used to call me like, you're boring, you're so lame, you don't even want to drink anymore, you don't want to do anything anymore. But I knew that it was for the better. So at this time, I worked so hard. I worked 90 hours a week just to make enough money to buy a car. And what was the most rational thing any 18-year-old would do? Go and buy an expensive BMW. And that's what I did. I bought a BMW, used to drive that really recklessly. I got into several accidents during that time, and it wasn't a great time, but it was also a great time at the same time. And so, one day I remember, it was midsummer of 2023, not too long ago. She was in the car and she was saying, hey, we never go to parties, we don't do anything anymore, you're so lame, why don't we go do something? So, to that pressure, I was like, okay, fine, let's go to LCBO. I bought a bottle of vodka, and we went down to the Scarborough Bluffs. I don't know if anyone of you guys have been to the Scarborough Bluffs. Yeah? Okay, so it's basically like a cliff, and you go down this cliff. It's like a windy road, and there's ditches on the side of the road. It's a very dangerous road to drive on. I don't know why it's shaped like that, but we went down there, and it was probably 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and I drank probably more than half of the bottle by myself, which is not a great idea. So I blacked out, and for some reason, during this time, I thought the best decision for me was to get behind the wheel. So I grabbed my keys out of my pocket, I guess I limped over to the car, I got in the car, and I drove. I had no consciousness of what was going on at all. I had no idea. And, I don't know, maybe 2 hours later, I ended up in this dead end. It was a neighborhood near my old school, my old elementary school. So it's a dead end. There's nothing else in front of me. It's just houses here, and an intersection behind me. That was all. Funny enough, I came to my senses, and I was just sitting there, just in front of my driver's, in my driver's seat. And I looked to my left, my windows rolled down. I looked to my right, where's my girlfriend at? Where did she go? So I look at my phone, I check my phone, and I'm just calling her. I'm calling her. No answer. No one was picking up. And then I look over to my left after about 5 or 10 minutes, and I see this older gentleman standing beside my window. And he says to me, son, what are you doing here? You just threw up on my lawn. What's wrong with you? You're in so much trouble right now. You need to repent. Right? I'm like, repent? What is this guy talking about? What? And at that point, I was like, okay, this guy's one of these Jesus freaks. I don't want to hear this, right? I was like, where's my girlfriend? That's all I cared about. I was so attached to that. And he's like, don't worry about her. She left you for dead. She took an Uber. So when I heard that, I was like, whoa. In my most vulnerable moment, you just left. You didn't even care. So then he tells me, he's like, yeah, I called your father. I'm like, how'd you get my father's number? He said, well, I somehow got it out of you. That was the only thing you remembered. You didn't even know your name. All you knew was your father's number. So I called my dad down, he came. So you might be wondering, where is the miracle in this story? Well, guess what? Out of that whole situation, where I drove to this guy's house, I went past several intersections. I'm talking at least 20, 30 different crosswalks. Went through many traffic lights. But not one scratch was on my car. There wasn't a dent, there wasn't a scratch. The cops weren't called, I didn't get any tickets. I didn't kill anybody, I didn't harm myself. And I was completely drunk. What are the odds? And I'm here now, telling my story to you. And after that situation, I took a little bit of reflection, I did a little bit of reflection. And I actually found out that that guy was a Christian pastor. So I stopped in front of a pastor's house, out of all people. And when I went back to that same neighborhood, I couldn't find him. He was nowhere to be found. I went to the house, he wasn't there. So, it makes me wonder, maybe God was holding the wheel that day. So for 6 months after that, I didn't really pay too much attention to that situation that happened. Rather, I just kind of went on about my day, continued doing what I was doing. I was kind of pushing myself away naturally from all the degeneracy that I was kind of entrenched in before that, but not to the same level that I should have been by accepting Christ. So about 6 months later, I decided to go to church one day because I met a girl on campus who introduced me to her fellowship. And the first day I went, I remember the pastor was standing up on the stage and he says, to everybody, just to everyone in the audience, whoever has like the Spirit within them, who wants to accept the Spirit, who wants to follow God today, come up to the stage. So out of everyone there, I think I was the only one that went up. I went up, and I'll never forget, I fell to my knees and I was crying my eyes out. I never felt that kind of love in my life. And so from that day forward, the Lord has blessed me with the vision, the courage, the determination, the strength to continue following my dreams and instilling a vision within me to continue writing. And so by the time I was in grade 12, for example, like I had 50s in English. I didn't know if I was ever going to become a writer. I wasn't really that talented. And there was a man that I'd met throughout my teenhood who was like a very, very established expert in his field. I'm not going to get into that right now, but he kind of encouraged me to write a story. So I said, okay, fine, I'm 15 years old, let me write a story. And it was probably the worst story I'd ever written in my life. It was so bad. But when I presented it to him, he was like, this was amazing. Like, you should write books one day. And at 15, I'm like, really? You think so? Like, no one's ever told me that. Like, my parents never told me that. And ever since then, I started writing books. And at 17 years old, I published my first book. And right now, at this moment, last week, I published my 9th book. So, yeah, here it is. If it wasn't for God in my life and accepting Christ, I don't think I'd be here today. So, yeah, that's my story.
Woo! Can we give one more big round of applause for Olivia and Mithun?